This is Birgitte and Tina coming to you with our first Wing Sisters video. And we're going to be doing some of these live in our Facebook group, so they won't be shareable. This one is Tina graciously accepted to be our first one here. And I've known Tina since we started Wing Sisters when I was on a paddleboard in a wing, and I had a vision for empowering women and just, encouraging each other as opposed to some places in the world where we may not feel that way. And I was picky who I added into Wing Sisters, and Tina's one of my favorites. And so, Tina, take it away. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what makes you tick.
Sure. And thank you so much for inviting me to do this. This is really special. And I just think that the group in general, Wing Sisters, is amazing. And it's so nice that you're able to create a space for women to get information, to get help, and also just be inspired. So thank you. So my name is Tina, and I live up over in Sebastopol, California. So some of the main beaches that I go to around here are like Dillon Beach. I go out to Tomales Bay, and I started out as a kite surfer, and then got really into kite surfing with like a directional board because the waves and everything out here. And then I got into kite foiling, loved it so much. And one day I saw, I think it was like at Sherman, somebody was out on a wing foil. And I saw this sail and I was thinking, that looks so silly. Why would anybody do something like that? They should be doing this the whole time. I don't understand it. I'm like, I'm never going to do that.
That's funny.
Never say never because you will. I ended up very obsessed with wing foiling.
Right. That's awesome. What's your background and what do you do in life?
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so I would say by day, my day job, I'm a recruiter, a technical recruiter. So I help. I've been helping for the last, I don't know, forever, companies build their software engineering organizations. So I've been doing that for a number of years. So, chatting with engineers, hiring them into companies. And then I do a lot of things on the side. I have a lot of projects that I work on too. I love real estate. So I also manage, properties. I have a Airbnb that I run outside of the country. I'm always working on something.
Yeah. Where's your Airbnb? People are probably curious. Maybe they want to go there.
Oh, I will certainly send a link out to anybody who wants to visit. It's in Portugal. It's
Okay.
in a town called Mafra. It's about 10 minutes away from Ericeira, which is the second world surf reserve. So there's the most amazing waves. There is so much wind out there. And one of the things that was really interesting is when I started going to Portugal, I was originally going there to go kite surfing, and I just fell in love with the country. But then I always thought, wow, you need like 20 meters of lines to be able to launch, and a lot of that coastline is really rocky. And I said, if only we didn't have to have 20 meters of lines to launch. So now, so much of that coastline is so accessible to wing foilers because
That's
you can
awesome.
just paddle out to the wind line, and you don't have to worry about setting up these lines and everything to get out.
Cool. So, what made you want to try wing foiling?
Yeah, let me think about that from that
Mhm.
first day that I saw it and it didn't look too appetizing.
I know it looked crazy, right?
Yeah, I guess what it was to me is I really enjoyed kite foiling. Once I started kite foiling, it was really difficult for me to go back to just like to kite. boarding on a twin tip. I just love the feel of the foil. It's almost like you're flying. There's no traction, and it's like, and especially like, even on like these light wind days, sometimes it was just such I don't know, like this amazing feeling to be out on the water with a foil and a kite. And I think what drove me to try wing foiling was I always like I don't know, I always like a challenge. And so then I always felt like since I was kite surfing, why not try, wing foiling? Love to be in the water. And so I ended up, a friend of mine, actually, Pablo, Pablo Tai, I was talking to him about wing foiling, and he said, I know somebody who's selling gear because I knew nothing about it. And, I ended up buying a 4 meter wing. And practicing, I think the first time was, I think, at Third Avenue and then also here in Bodega. But when I was practicing the first time, I didn't even have a foil on the board. I had like a big sup foil board, like 110 liters. And I
Yep.
knew nothing about this sport. And I've been trying out there and I'm with like the wing. And I'm like, why isn't this thing doing anything? Well, it's because you can't really go in a direction when your sup foil doesn't have like a
Like
foil on it or any like rotor to like direct
yes.
it. So I was like going nowhere.
So it turned out you were going to be better at it than you thought.
I was so silly out there. And then I remember being at like Third Avenue one time, and I remember somebody, my friend Pablo, was yelling at me. He was like, just go in the water and I'll tell you what to do. But we had no walkie-talkies. And so he was like yelling at me from shore. And I said, I have no idea what he's saying. And I'm just floating down to Third Avenue, not knowing what to do.
That's that's funny. I think a lot of us can relate to that story, and I'll tell mine some other time. But what are some of your favorite wing sports besides the ones, or even including the ones you mentioned? Um, what are
Oh,
some of your favorite spots?
my favorite spots. Okay. Well, my absolute place that I feel is like, I don't know, I guess a place that makes me really happy to wingfill and actually do other sports is Dillon Beach. That's up here I'm in Sonoma County, but it's actually Marin County where it is. It's about 25 minutes from my house. And
Nice.
Dillon used to be this place that I used to be really intimidated by. I would see the waves because I started there like kite surfing, and it was sort of like a goal of mine to be able to kite surf Dillon. And then it became a place that I became so familiar. And you start to be so familiar with the breaks and how the waves are, and, just getting how to enter and how to exit. So Dillon is definitely one of my favorite places to wing foil, um, mostly because I love to ride waves. I love wave riding, and I loved it in kiting, and I loved it in kite foiling, and I love it in wing foiling too. It's just one of
Yeah.
my
And
favorite.
subfoiling, because I know you love that too. And you know what? We get to do whatever we want that makes us happy. And you're pretty amazing, trying new things constantly like that.
Oh,
And
but I'm always a sort of a mess doing it too. It's never pretty.
that's all right. It's that's what I've heard, that what successful people do is they just throw themselves into it and they don't know exactly how it's gonna pan out, but at least we're trying it. So that's awesome.
Trying it. I think
Uh
that's what we all share is we all just want to try. We all just want to try.
yeah, yeah. So what's the best part of being on the water for you? Like how does it make you feel? And not just winging, like in general with your water sports.
It's it's really interesting because I have a personality that I'm always like, I can't rest. It's always like go, go, go. my mind, I feel, is always racing all the time. And people always talk about meditation, sitting, down, doing like yoga or sitting down and like doing breathing exercises. And I know all of those things are really good, but I have personally a hard time to sit still. And for me, and I've always said this, I feel that being on the water, um, being in the ocean, like the
Mhm.
salt water,
Yeah.
I feel to me that's my meditation.
Yeah.
Um, and it is when, you have all of these other things going on in life, right? Like
Yeah.
work and, you know, whatever is going on in your life and personal. But when you're on the water, I feel like you have to focus like purely on, um, the elements, what's around you.
Yes.
It takes you into such like a deep focus. And I feel that takes me into like a place where I can forget whatever else is going on in the world
I
and just
love it.
on that. And I could be so tired. I could like have a stressful day, be so tired. And then if I go out to the water and then come back out, I have all this energy. It kind of like I just feel like it's a place that's very like healing and also rejuvenating and also gives like a lot of energy.
And a second wind, perhaps. No pun intended.
Like that.
So,
It's
yeah.
second.
So, what's your consistency level in getting on the water, and what might be getting in the way? Like if you, yeah.
And that depends. Because last year, and I think you know this, last year I took a personal sabbatical and I was on the water I think like whenever there was conditions for it, like whether it was winging or wing or subfoiling, I was on the water probably like 5 to 6 days a week. Now, being back to normal life, normal routine, and now that the days are also getting shorter, I've definitely have been on the water more on the weekends, getting out on the weekends. And then because I don't live so far from the water, I try to get out as much as possible. So maybe about like 2 days per week during the weekdays, sometimes 3 days per week. But it just depends on what the conditions are doing. But
Yeah.
I like to at least try to get a few days during the week. And then my weekends are mostly just dedicated to being on the water.
Awesome. It's a great way to restore and renew and all that. So very,
Yeah.
very, it's fun, but also a very smart move, like in our busy world. So,
It's it's so true. But one thing that I will mention is when I did have this opportunity to take time off, and I said, "Oh, all I want to do is foil, foil, foil. That's all I want to do." I have to be really careful because I tend to overdo things. And I was going on the water a lot. And maybe I wasn't paying attention to doing other things like stretching. Maybe I wasn't paying attention to doing my other workouts that I usually do. Because I also do like supplemental workouts to help with the foiling.
okay.
And I ended up getting injured. I had like a L3, L4 disc injury, and it was from not listening to my body. And I knew it. I was out on the water for a really long time and I was foiling, and I could feel like sort of a tweak in the back, and I didn't listen to it, whatever. And I ended up like getting a herniated disc from it. So just also being very mindful of your body and listening to what it wants to do.
Yeah, I can so relate to that. And I've actually had herniated discs twice. And it's like I didn't learn from the first time, but I know it's usually when my hamstrings get tight. And so if I don't get to my like what you call supplemental workout, which is so important for balance, at least I stretch my hamstrings. But I always aspire to do more of those supplemental things. because it
It's
may not be as fun at the moment, but it's going to keep you being able to get back out there and do what you
it's I agree. It's so important. Like I think that's such an important piece is like not just the wing foiling and foiling part, but then also if you're going to do that sport to be able to do things that are also conditioning those muscles.
want.
Um, and so like on the days that I mentioned that I can't get out to the water, then I'll usually do a boot camp. Um, so I always try to do something, to keep things sort of active and conditioned.
Yeah, that's great. So understanding the nature of this sport, and we all probably had to adjust. How would you say you adjust your life to make it happen? Like you mentioned, like how you go out, but like what have you done in to make it happen for you?
Yeah. That's a that's I think there's certain things like, the main thing is right time.
Yeah,
Um and with like thinking about like work and things like that.
yeah,
Um I typically like right now I do start my days earlier, like around like 7, and I'm usually can get out around like 3 or 4. So I can get out onto the water. But I think starting the day earlier, I'm a morning person anyway, so I like to wake up early. So I think with work, just starting it earlier so I can get off a little bit earlier and get out on the water.
okay.
Um, and then other things, I think most of my friends, whether they're all the water people understand what your priorities are water. But your non-water people who are not water people, I think they know me by now because I've been doing water sports for a while. And so I think that they know that it's sort of my priority. And so people just sort of understand that maybe I would have plans, but then I find out it's going to be very windy or very good conditions. Plans might change.
That's why we love to surround. One of the reasons we love to surround ourselves with the water sport people because we have an understanding of that and what's important, right? I love
Exactly. I've been trying to be a little bit better about it. I feel like I'm calming down a little bit, and trying to have, that balance of being able to see some of my friends that don't do that and being able to see them and the wind may be blowing. And so not canceling plans.
yeah.
I would say, yeah, with like respect to like work, just like trying to have more of a flexible schedule starting a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Okay, cool. So, what are some of your favorite takeaways from being part of the water sport community in general?
It's like it's honestly it's meeting like people who are super inspirational, meeting people like you,
Oh,
who are very inspirational. I think like there's so much support in the water community, and there's always people who are like really like talented. Um, and I feel like especially with like subfoiling, there's always been I feel like great mentors that have helped me, like when I first started to subfoil. I know that's different than what we're talking about wing foiling, but getting into subfoiling, I'd never even paddled before. Like I'd probably been on a sup once before. And so I was like trying to learn, and there are people who have been in the sport or in the sport of paddling and helping me along the way, giving me lessons with paddle technique. And I just think that you meet the most interesting people in this community because they're always pushing like the boundaries on things, or
yeah.
they travel to different places and you get to learn about all of the places that they love and why they love it. And I think it's like one of the most supportive communities, a place where you feel that you like belong.
Yeah, that's I feel the same way about it. It's really cool. So um do you feel like learning to wing or even some of the other water sports that you've learned has helped you in other areas of your life? It's the process and of that, and then if it has, how?
Huh. Yeah, I think it's very relatable. I think like, perseverance, like it's not easy to learn some of these sports. It's like especially like when I think about learning how to wing foil, um, learning and right now learning how to downwind foil. Oh my gosh, half the time I'm like yelling at my board. But I think that it teaches a lot of like perseverance, which you need for, you know, everything else outside of, the water. And then also, it's the challenge. And I think touching back on that part about when you're out on the water and you're learning, and then, you come back into your like normal life, I feel like it has given you that time and sort of that energy, like that second wind that you talked about,
Mhm.
to come back and to work on everything else that you're doing, because you feel like you had that time. But I think like, yeah, it's challenging to learn different sports, especially when you're starting out. And I think that, it gives you that confidence,
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
that you can do it and that everything, whether it's water sports or things outside of life, that, you might not get it the first, second, 100th time, but keep pushing and pushing and pushing and it'll happen.
Exactly. Thank you so much for sharing that, Tina. I'm excited to learn more alongside of you, and I really appreciate you.